Welcome all. This is David Celani speaking. I'm a psychologist here at my home office in Vermont, and I want to inform you of a talk that I'll be giving for the Object Relations Institute in New York City on June 29th from 11:30 to 3:45. This talk will be an introduction to the work of Ronald Fairbairn, a not terribly well-known psychoanalyst who wrote an absolutely dynamite model in the 40s that has been basically ignored by the psychoanalytic community because it was so controversial and so opposed to many of the tenets of classical psychoanalysis. What I want to do in this 4-hour program is introduce you to this model and show you how you can use this in your office. It was a very, very difficult start in my practice, starting in 1974, because I didn't know certain fundamental things about splitting, multiple selves, dissociation. And I learned this step by step and finally was introduced to Fairbairn's model in 1983 through Stephen Mitchell and Jay Greenberg's book, Object Relations in Psychoanalytic Theory. Fairbairn left us 5 or 6 really, really significant topics. His model is very often somewhat confused and difficult to read. And over the years, in my 5 books that I've written about Fairbairn, I have tried to operationalize it. What do you do with this model? Is it any good? Can it help you in the office? The 5 or 6 things that he left us, he talked about dependency, the child's intense dependency on his parents. Secondly, he talked about dissociation. This is a dissociation-trauma model. That is, he saw that the child had to dissociate events that were very, very negative that occurred in his family or her family because they interfered with his dependency needs on his parents. He could not remember certain things because they were so toxic. The third thing he left us was a developmental arrest model. Abuse and neglect eventuate into developmental arrest, which sounds odd. Why would a deprived child get more dependent on his parents than a well-nurtured child? We'll look into this carefully. Fourth, he left us a structural model. And this is the key to the whole damn thing. The structural model describes different ego states that appear in the therapeutic experience in your office that, frankly, I had no idea about in 1974. And I was exposed to these all the time. I got used to them. I even made some names up for them, never having read Fairbairn. But they exist. This is not a fantasy model. This is a model that really is close to your clinical experience in the office. These structures offer you enormous opportunity for treatment. They tell you what is going on with it. You don't have to put the patient on a couch and wait for the slip of the lip or any stuff like that. It's so obvious. Their relationship to you and to external objects tell you clearly what the history of the person was and what they are going through and repeating endlessly in their life and with you in the office. And 5, he left us a terrific, clear statements about defenses. You can't just blunder into the office and think that the patient is going to listen to you. They are going to fight and reject most everything you say because of their enormous defenses. And Fairbairn outlined 3 defenses, which you've seen. Frankly, you've seen all this stuff, although you may not have had the proper labels or the understanding of it. Other models don't talk about this very much. And therefore, it's an outlier of a model. And yet, if you take out all Fairbairn's idle speculations about this and that, yeah, and you just stick with these fundamentals, you really have a powerful tool to deal with patients that were uh, often labeled, oh, they're borderlines, they're this, they're that, they're untreatable. What a bunch of not, they're untreatable using other models, sure, because you have no idea what's going on. Let me just give you one example. I started out at 74. Okay, have my office, and this big school teacher, when I say big, she's overweight, school teacher comes in and starts to tell me about, frankly, a horrific childhood. Horrific. Father ripped the telephone off the wall, tipped the refrigerator over, and jumped on the food. Her mother whispered, if daddy kills me tonight, go across the street to Mrs. Murphy and tell her to call the police. So here I am, newly minted psychologist, and I would say, my goodness, how could you survive this, blah, blah, blah. And the patient said, well, my parents were very good. They're not as bad as you say. And she was very, very defensive. And I thought, what's wrong? And she went back to their home about 80 miles away every weekend, did house cleaning for them. They criticized her endlessly. What is going on? I mean, I was in a Sullivanian. I said, Sullivan doesn't talk about this. What is going on? Anyway, so we'll start treatment, and let's say 5 sessions in, I get a letter on 3 days after her session, a big legal size letter with yellow legal size pad paper in it and a handwritten letter. Dr. Celani, everything you say is true. My parents were a nightmare, blah, blah, blah. A completely different version of reality than she showed me when she was in the office being defensive. I thought, what the hell is this? I didn't know about Fairbairn. I didn't know about multiple split off cells. I didn't know anything. So after about 5 weeks of this, of getting these letters saying that I was correct after being extremely defensive in the sessions, I finally pulled one out of my office desk and said, well, what is this? Patient jumps up, she's a big, and says, you put that thing away or I'm going to come over and slap you in the face. That convinced me, put it away. Why? Because separate ego states, I didn't know this in those days, separate ego states are intolerant of any information that that will endanger their dependency, frankly. That's what it does. That is, if the patient remembers how bad the parents were, it would endanger their dependency and they would never grow up. This is why it's called a developmental arrest model. Loving parents support the child at every developmental step. They go to the games, they help them out, they do this and that. Not dysfunctional families. They don't help the child. They don't help the child achieve the next level of interaction. And basically, it's a lack of differentiation from the original object because they don't support differentiation. They don't help the child. All right. And so the two huge developmental factors that fail in the borderline and many other patients are differentiation and integration. Integration of the good and the bad object into a single view of the parent. And why can't that happen? Because the bad outweighs the good by 50 to 1 in a dysfunctional. How can you integrate hundreds of events of being insulted or neglected, locked in a closet, as one of my friends was, not a patient, locked in a closet through many years of her childhood, on and off, she'd be locked in a closet. How can you remember all that when you have to go home to have dinner? You can't. So it's dissociated. So these separate pockets of reality emerge in the office, and it's very important that you know to whom you're speaking, because if you say the wrong thing, you're just going to get like me saying to the patient, well, what about this letter? It's the wrong thing to say. You're in a different ego state. You cannot say that. You have to hold off and understand these structures. That's why the structural model gives you opportunities for treatment. That's the whole point. This is like a YouTube how to do it, how to do psychoanalysis through this model of object relations, which, as again, does not partake of the sort of the classical theory, the theory that we inherit rage and aggression and sexuality, and we have to fight against these structures. The id is boiling up, and the ego has to learn how to mediate, and the superego is the internalization of the higher level, and the structures are all fighting. That's not this. That's not it. There's no Oedipus. There's no id. There's no sex drive. There's no libido. None of it. That's why Fairbairn was virtually excluded from the field of psychoanalysis. He contradicted the Freudian tenets so strongly that they wanted nothing to do with it. And don't forget, in 1940, his papers, great papers, are from 40 to 52, a lot of papers, collected in his book, single book, which is a collection, psychoanalytic studies of the personality, which came out in 52 and is still available. So he was not mainstream. He was seen as basically a traitor because he attacked Freud, who was adored by psychoanalysis, and other analysts saw him as a traitor. Don't forget, psychoanalysis was being attacked all the time, especially by the church, and this notion of childhood sexuality was just an anathema to society. So they were already being attacked. And here's a guy from the inside that says, here's a better model. You don't need all this other Oedipal stuff. Whoa, that was the end of him, basically. He never made any headway. And he alienated the only support group he had. He alienated other psychoanalysts. There wasn't a huge proliferation of other mental health services. I mean, with psychoanalytic treatment, or virtually nothing, or drug treatment. Nowadays, we have all sorts of different models and all sorts of different practitioners that are interested in this. And Fairbairn is long gone. He died in 1964. He was born in 1889. So that is what this talk is about. How to take this Fairbairn's model, strip it out of all his speculative. Psychoanalysis is just loaded with unfounded speculation. Oh, the energy goes here and the energy goes there and it jumps here and this does this to that. None of that. None of that. You can see this stuff happening in your office. I saw it, and I even gave it a name. I called when I would see the patient shift from extreme aggression toward their parents as they were recalling all this horrible stuff that happened to them, and then splitting into a completely different sense of self and say, don't you say another nasty thing about my parents or I'm going to leave the room. I learned to say, oh, we're back to hope springs eternal. I gave, and this Fairbairn's libidinal ego, I gave it my own name because I never read Fairbairn until 83. And I was seeing this constantly. I mean, it was like endless. My patients are going back to their negative, hostile families every weekend, or some of them were living at home. Nobody else in the field that I know of spoke about this as the central issue, the issue of dependency on it's called attachment to bad objects, dependency on bad objects, the return to the family because they don't have enough developmental support to go out into the world and negotiate adult roles. They develop a very closed inner world of fantasy, a lot of fantasy, but it's about the parents and it's about others. It's fantasy that tries to meet their developmental needs. This is the kids that are in the basement watching either porno or these violent, aggressive things where they feel so powerful because they've been stripped of their dignity by their abuse, neglect, being ignored. They've been stripped of their dignity. So it's a very, very contemporary model that you can use on a wide variety of patients. So you can see how the dissociated trauma, which is really neglect of the child's needs, doesn't allow them to develop. So that's why a trauma model is connected to a developmental arrest model. They go hand in hand. So that will be this talk, which will be on Sunday, the 29th from 11:30 to 3:45. And I urge you, if you're at all interested in Fairbairn, or if you are a treatment person and wondering about these sudden ego shifts that no one told you about, this might be the talk for you. I look forward to seeing you this Sunday, the 29th. Thank you very much.